Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning. Brittany Macnab, Nisikasan, or Jishinekashan. And today is day 3, okay? Day 3 of our learning. And so, while we wait for people to join here, I'm just going to give you guys a quick review of what we learned for Lesson 1 and Lesson 2, okay? Now, Lesson 1 was the Red River Resistance, okay, in 1869-1870. We were introduced to Louie Riel, Ambrose Lepine. We know that it's the first provisional government that happened, okay? The formation of the Red River lots and why they were important, the takeover of Fort Garry, the Métis people requesting land, education, Red River lots, and a representation in Parliament, okay? With that, the Canadian government said no. We learned about the death of Thomas Scott, okay? The young guy who came from Ontario over to Western Canada, or the Red River. We learned that the Canadians were mad and they wanted Riel dead because of the death of Thomas Scott. Okay. Canada wants their railway built now. Riel is being hunted, so he goes to Montana. There he has a mental breakdown because he is being hunted. Okay. His friends go to get him because of the stories they've heard. They take him to Montreal to the mental health hospital, or the psych ward, they might have called it, under the name of Louis David, okay? After that, Riel returns to Montana. He gets married. He has 2 children. And he now works at the church as a preacher, and he teaches like a Sunday school, okay? Lesson number 2, we started the Northwest Resistance. So the battle at Duck Lake, which happened on March 26th. They met in the fur trading post. The Canadians came over and said, hey, are you Riel's people? Because of that, they had to fight. Isidore Dumont, Gabriel Dumont's brother, dies. Gabriel Dumont gets really, really mad. He goes on his shooting streak or brigade or whatever you want to call it. He ends up getting shot, but does live. Okay, the Métis give all of the deaths, or all the Canadian soldiers and Métis soldiers, a proper burial. It's a Métis win. Okay, Frog Lake Massacre happened with First Nations chief Big Bear. His people were starving. His war chief, Wandering Spirit, says, I'll handle the problem. Wandering Spirit goes to the Indian agent Thomas Quinn's house to ask for food. He's denied. Wandering Spirit gets mad. 9 people are killed, including Thomas Quinn. Okay, Big Bear's people are now on the run because of this. They know the Canadian government's coming. The battle at Turon's Coulee, or Fish Creek, happened on April 24th. Okay, there was 15 Métis men in the coulee. The Canadian Army fire at them. No Métis die in this battle. Gabriel Dumont shoots at McDougall, gets his hat. It's unsure if it was on purpose or not. The Canadian Army realizes they needed more training, and so that's where they sit for a while. Now, back to First Nations chief Pom Maker. Okay, Pom Maker and his people are starving because they didn't sign treaty and they aren't entitled to rations. Okay. And they go to Battleford. They ask for food. There's no response because everyone's too scared sitting in the fort. Pom Maker laid his blanket and he sat there, okay? Just saying, like, I'm just here for food. I want to talk. Pom Maker's people, they then go into the houses to get the food. Houses are started on fire. If that's intentional, I don't know. So Pom Maker leads his people to Cut Knife on the hill, which is where we have this, okay, where they put the ponies on the outside and then they had the dogs so that they could hear the people coming. They had their Pom Maker soldiers, or his army, or his men, at the bottom so that they could fight the Canadians coming. The women and children were protected in the bush, in the middle of the hill, and Pom Maker was at the top of the hill giving signs to let his people know which way they were coming from. Okay. So Pom Maker, because of this battle, Pom Maker knows that the Canadians will come after them, because it will be seen as an attack of the Canadians. Okay, which is where we enter the Battle of Batoche. Okay, lots of people know about Batoche and think that that's the only battle that happened in 1885, but it's not. Okay, there were many that led up to the Battle of Batoche. Now, where to start with the Battle of Batoche? So today we will cover what happened at Batoche, Okay, and then what happened to our leaders? What happened to Louie Riel and Gabriel Dumont and all them after all these battles? Okay. Now, when starting with the Battle of Batoche, it is important to know a few things, which I've got right here. Now, everyone is at Batoche. Now, there's a church at Batoche that you guys can still go see. Okay, it's still standing. And that's kind of where they had like their medical center, supply center. Okay, and so all the extra bedding and all the extra blankets and the pelts and all that kind of thing were kept in the church. Okay, beside the church was the priest's house. Okay, so you had your church and the priest's house. And that's kind of where everyone was situated. Okay, now there's a river right beside Batoche. I believe it's the South Saskatchewan River. It's right beside Batoche. Oh, you guys can see my lines. Okay, but this is the river. I'm going to darken these so that we can see them. Okay, that's the river. Now, if you go to Batoche now, there's a bridge here. Okay, in 1885 there was no bridge. Okay, they had a ferry service, and so they put your vehicle on kind of like a boat, and then they would pull the cable, and the boat would go across the river, and so that's kind of how your vehicle would cross the river then. Okay, now the Canadian Army, or the Canadian Forces, had the Northcote. Okay, and it was a boat. It was this little steam engine. Okay, ran by coal, so there was a fire going that made sure the motor ran. But on top, they had a bunch of square bales. Okay, now they knew that the Métis people knew that they were going to use this Northcote. Okay, they were going to use the boat to access Batoche. Okay, which was right here. Now, Gabriel Dumont said, you know, they're going to come after our community of Batoche. Okay, because Batoche is here, but the church is actually over here. Okay, and so he said they're going to come after the community. They're going to think we're sitting in the general store. They're going to think that we're sitting at the fur trading post. Okay, and I got to stop saying K. I realized that. Okay. Anyways, Gabriel Dumont says when they're going across with the boat, lower the cable. And so as the steam engine is going, okay, as the Northcote is going towards the community of Batoche, the cable is lowered, which knocks over this stack. And when this stack gets knocked over, all of the bales, all of the square bales on the steam engine light on fire. Okay? And the entire boat goes down. Okay, the entire boat is on fire. And so they don't get to the community of Batoche. Now, Gabriel Dumont's plan, okay, very smart tactical man, said, you know, let's create these rings surrounding the church. Let's create these rifle pits. And we'll have them so the first bunch super spread out. Okay? And then as these rifle pits get taken over, we'll have men drop back into the next row of pits. And if this row gets attacked, or if they have to drop back, they drop back again. And so they have a super condensed or super solid line of rifle pits right beside the church, because that's where the men would have been all sitting. Now, when the Canadian Army came over, Gabriel Dumont said, we're going to wait and we're going to light a fire. Okay? We'll light a fire in front of our pits, and the wind will blow and it'll blind the Canadian soldiers so that they can't see us, so that they don't know where to shoot. Okay? And when they lit the fire, when Gabriel Dumont lit the fire, the wind was kind of in their favor, but kind of not, because it blew towards the Canadian soldiers, but some of it also blew back to them. Now, at this point in the 1885 resistance, the Métis people did not have a lot of bullets. Okay? We were We had some. We had enough to get the job done, but we didn't have lots. And so the Canadian Army would walk up, and let's say that they would walk up here, okay? They would get 1 shot from here and maybe 2 shots from here. And so the Canadian Army would say, oh, well, there's people over there. Let's go this way. And so they'd approach from this side. And maybe you'd get 1 shot from here, but 2 shots from here. And then they'd walk over here, and maybe they got 3 shots from here and 1 shot from here. And so the Canadian Army was kind of scoping out, if people only have 2 bullets, they're not going to waste those bullets. But if people have, 16 bullets, they're going to be firing more than 1 shot. And so the Canadian government, the Redcoats, found the weak spot, and that's where they went in. And so the Canadian Army, they go into the weak spot because they know that this guy only fired once. So he must not have tons of ammunition. But this guy over here fired 3 times. So he's got lots. And so that's how they kind of would break these barriers, okay? And as soon as this one was taken over, they would say, okay, men, get back to the next rifle pit. And so they'd go back, and they would be in this row now. Now, side story, in the second ring, okay, there was an old man, and the old man's name was Joseph Olette, and they called him Old Man Olette, because he was 93 years old fighting in the Battle of Batoche, okay, and that would be my grandma's grandpa, or great-grandpa, okay. Joseph Olette, Old Man Olette, was in one of these pits, and the stories I've heard about this man is that, he was 93, super old, and when they went to say, Joseph, we gotta go back to the next pit, Joseph said, you guys go, I'm old, I'll hold them off as long as I can, okay? And because of this heroic act, because of what he did, he has his own burial in Batoche. So if you go to the Batoche cemetery, there's everyone's kind of in a mass burial there. All the soldiers that had died, all the Metis soldiers that had died in the Battle of Batoche are buried in a mass burial, and Joseph Olette has his own, as does another man, Jobin. I don't remember his first name. But while this was happening, the Métis men would drop back to this barrier, and then they would drop back to these pits, and I believe when they hit the second row and they saw that they were losing, they told all the women and children to go hide in the bush, opposed to over here, kind of with the church. And so they went and hid. And while in the second row, they had Bishop Andre, who is the priest or the preacher, or I'm not sure of the correct term. Bishop Andre, he took out his white pillowcase and he started waving it. And he was waving it out of his window, okay? And that was a sign of him surrendering, because white means peace. And so the battle kind of stopped, and Bishop Andre walked through it all towards the Canadian Army. And some people will say that he told them where the rifle pits were, and some people will say, he told them their plan. I don't think he did, but maybe. Who am I? Wasn't there. And so Bishop Andre goes, he surrenders. I imagine the Métis people are quite, mad that their priest surrendered, but they dealt with it. And when they got here, lots of Métis men were dying, okay? And so Louie Riel, who wasn't in these pits, okay, Louie Riel wasn't in these pits. He was probably in the church or somewhere else. He went and said, my people are dying because the Canadian Army wants me. My people are dying because, of what happened in Red River or whatever it may be, but they're after me. They're not after my people. And so Louie Riel goes to the Canadian government, and they have pictures of him in camp. If I had internet, I would show you. But they have pictures of Louie Riel in McDougall's camp with just Canadian soldiers circling him. And they're kind of like, we've prepared for this Louie Riel to be an insane savage, like to just be like attacking us. And he just walked over and gave himself up. Now, Gabriel Dumont goes to find Louie Riel's wife and says, like, where's Louie? Like, we got to go to Montana. We got to run. And she says, like, no, like, Louie Riel handed himself in. He's over at McDougall's camp now. Like, we need to get our people out of here. We need to protect our people because that's probably only going to hold them off for so long. Okay, so Louie Riel gave himself up to the Canadian government. And the rest of the people are hiding in the bush. They're, tending to their soldiers. They're tending to their men. All that kind of thing. And they've got Riel, so they kind of got what they want. And when they transferred Riel, because they had to transfer Louie Riel to Regina, they were... the Canadian government was scared that Gabriel Dumont was going to come after to save Louie Riel, was going to, stop the carriage and get him out of the box and all that kind of thing. And so when they were transferring Louie Riel, they always had like 8 to 12 Canadian soldiers with them because they were scared Dumont was going to come and kill them all and get Riel. Now, that didn't happen. We know that didn't happen. Okay? But that's kind of the end of the Battle of Batoche. Now, to talk about what happened to our leaders, okay, I want to start with Chief Pom Maker. After the battle at Cut Knife Hill, Chief Pom Maker gave himself up, and he said, the Canadian government knows that it's Pom Maker's people who did it, and so they're going to be after Pom Maker. They're not going to be after my people. And so he gave himself up. He was sentenced to 3 years at the Stony Mountain Penitentiary for treason. Now, treason means that you're fighting your own government. Now, we know throughout the lessons that this part of Canada isn't a part of Canada yet, right? It's still considered the Northwest Territories. And so, realizing that this many years later, we know that it was wrong to charge Pom Maker with treason, okay? Simply because he was not that area of Canada now was not a part of Canada then. He was sentenced to 3 years for treason. He served less than a year, okay? Because they kind of kept him in a basement. Maybe he didn't get the cleanest water or the best food or the best treatment or even warm blankets for the winter and stuff like that. And so he got really sick. And when he got really sick, the Canadian government decided, whoa, Pom Maker can't die in our care, okay? This can't be the way he dies. And so they released him after less than a year. And months later, he died, okay? And I think it was like 3 months later, Pom Maker died. Chief Big Bear also went to Stony Mountain Penitentiary, was also given 3 years for treason. Same story, this part of Canada wasn't actually a part of Canada. And he served 1.5 years. And I'm just looking at my notes so that I get this right for you guys, okay? He served 1.5 years. He was released in February of 1887, and he was also very, very sick. Okay? Story is he went down to Regina for a while, and then he returned to Little Pine to live with his daughter, where he died January of 1888. Okay? So he was home for less than a year before he died. Wandering Spirit, the warrior chief who fought with Chief Big Bear, was hung in North Battleford with 7 other Indigenous men who were part of the 1885 rebellion. It's a resistance. And that was on November 27th of 1885. Now, before Wandering Spirit was hung, they asked him, like, do you have any final words? And he sang a love song to his wife. Okay? So as much as a bad human he was, you know, he had a compassionate heart, and he wasn't a bad human at all. Okay. Gabriel Dumont, you know, during the Battle of Batoche, he said, me and Riel have to get out of here. We got to go to Montana. They're after us. Louie Riel handed himself in, and so Gabriel Dumont went to Montana. And when he left, you know, he went to, we'll say it was Jim. He went to Jim and he said, okay, you have to tell the Canadian government that I have 80 bullets on me and that I'm ready to use them. I have my gun. I have my horse. I have everything I need. I can live off the land. If they want to come find me, I dare them to try. Okay? And he had his gun that he called Lil Petite. Okay? He left Montana. While in Montana, they thought, like, wow, this guy's a really good hunter. Like, what should we do with him? And that's when he joined the Buffalo Bills Wild West show. And he was kind of treated like a circus. Like, instead of saying, oh, like, look at this lion, it was like, oh, look at Gable Dumont. Look at what he can do. Look at his cool tricks. And they would have him do, like, shooting apples off people's head and riding his horse really fast and then jumping and doing something and all that kind of stuff. So he was kind of treated, he was treated well, but kind of like a show or like an act. He got tired of that. In about 1893, he asked the Canadian government if he could come back to Canada and not be hunted, you know, if he could come back peacefully. And they said, yeah, you absolutely can. You know, we understand why you did the things you did. You can come back. And so in 1893, so what is that, 8 years later, he came back, and at Batoche, where the ferry crossing was, where this cable is, okay, is his house. And they still have his house, okay? And they call it Dumont's Crossing, okay? Or Gabriel Dumont's Crossing. And that house is now owned by Maria Campbell, who's a Métis author, okay? So it's still standing. There's no running water in the house. I'm not sure if there's electricity in the house either. But the house is still there. It's still Gabriel Dumont's Crossing. And that's where he lived his life. And he would do his trap lines. And he would do his hunting and provide for himself and take care of himself and all that kind of thing. But he was then moved to PA. He was in PA. He lived with his niece. His niece helped him out every now and then, or in the summers or during the fall. He would go back to his house, and she would check in on him, and he died in his sleep. So he had a very peaceful death. I like at Batoche grounds now. Gabriel Dumont's plaque is a giant rock with information about him on it. Now, it's believed to say that Gabriel Dumont's request for when he died was to be buried standing up, looking at the river. Where he is buried is the farthest in the cemetery, so that it is looking over the river, but they say that he's been buried laying down, not standing up. Yeah, so I guess that wish wasn't granted for that one. Now, Métis leader Louie Riel. Louie Riel has a kind of crazy story. And you can still learn about it, read about it, and you should still learn about it and read about it. But when Louie Riel was taken to Regina, they put him up on trial. And they gave him a lawyer, and they said, you know, here's your lawyer. Kind of listen to him. He'll do the best that he can and make sure that you get out of this. Now, remembering that Louie Riel studied law for a bit, okay, his lawyer said, you know, you need to say you're crazy. You can't remember the decisions you made. You don't know what state of mind you're in. You can't remember them. You don't know why you made them. You didn't mean to make those decisions. Of which Louie Riel said, no, like if I plead that I'm crazy, that makes the Métis people look foolish for following a crazy leader, right? And so he said, no, like, I'm sane, okay? I know what's happening in my head. I know why I made the decisions I did. I don't know why I'm being arrested. The only reason we fought the Canadian government is because you guys were out hunting me. You know, we agreed to join Canada, but we agreed on the 4 conditions of land, education, Red River lots, language and representation of Parliament. Sorry, land and Red River lots are the same one. And he said, you know, you can't charge me with treason, so you can't charge me with fighting against my own country because we weren't a part of your country. You know, Red River wasn't a part of Canada when you came there. Therefore, why Canadian laws cannot be the base of the argument. And so they sentenced him with treason. He went up there, he gave his speech, you know, and in this book you can see a picture of Louie Riel, okay? That's him there, okay? And you can still see pictures of Louie Riel in his trial. During the trial, he said, you know, I'm asking that the jury, so the people deciding what happens, understand the situation of not being a part of Canada, of, you know, to be charged with treason was the wrong thing to be charged with, I guess, at this point. The jury at Louie Riel's trial, so remember how we talked about representation in Parliament, so that the Métis people could be in charge of the rules that were being made, and they can be, they could have a say in what's happening with their rules. Now, the jury of Louie Riel's trial was an all-white jury. Now, this isn't the first time this has happened, and we know that, right? So there was an all-white jury that tried Louie Riel, which many people thought was unfair. I think is unfair, okay? If you have no one there representing who you are, what you did, or even having a say in what's happening of, you know, you can't do that to him because of this, right? They were all, they're all French, Protestant, from Eastern Canada, and they were all white jury, and so Louie Riel was tried by an all-white jury. Having said that, once he gave his speech, because he was such a poetic man, okay, when he spoke, people listened, and he spoke smoothly, and after he spoke, the jury said, we understand, you know, why Louie Riel did the things he did. We get that. We understand that he did fight the Canadian government, and he was in charge of the people who did fight the Canadian government, and all of these things. But we do not believe that he should have the death penalty because of this. Okay? And the Canadian government said, you know, he fought our country. Many people died because of this man. This man is going to die. And so after that, the court system agreed that Louie Riel should be hung, okay, for what he did, for what he was in charge of. And he gave himself up on March 12th, and he was supposed to get hung at the end of May. And then they decided to move the date, and they would have had him in, like, a jail cell and said, like, you know, like, tomorrow's the day. And then when tomorrow came, they would have said, oh, just kidding, like, we moved it a couple weeks, like, it's gonna happen in a couple weeks. And so then he would prepare himself to die again, and then they would say, oh, actually, we're gonna move it a couple more weeks, or we're gonna move it to next month, and we'll see what happens after that. And so he didn't have a set date. Having said that, on November 16th of 1885, okay, November 16th, 1885, Louie Riel was hung. Now, for the guy who put the rope over his neck, okay, there's rumors, there's some documentation Not a lot, but supposedly he was related to Thomas Scott, and he said, you know, because you took Thomas Scott, you know, we're going to get you. Or because you took one of us, we're taking one of yours. Or we're taking you. And so many people argue that Louie Riel was not hung for treason. He was not hung for fighting his own country, which wasn't actually his country. But that he was hung for the death of Thomas Scott. Which is why we had to learn lesson 1 and 2 before we learned lesson 3 today. Okay? So, I challenge you all to go and, you know, prove me wrong. Find documents that say none of this is true. But that's mainly just me tricking you to do more get more information. Okay? I left out details on every battle, strictly because the lesson's tailored to grade 5. And even then, some parents might not agree with how graphic it got. But it's the truth, you know? That's Canadian history. That's something people don't talk about. It's something people don't teach. And I don't think that's right. So, this is my truth. All of this information you've learned from me today or throughout the week is my truth. It's my history. Okay, it's Métis history. And you can't unknow what you know. And so when someone says, do you know anything about the Métis? If you reply no, you are lying. Okay? You can't unknow what you know. And with that, I'm going to leave you. And I'm going to say, wash your hands. Okay? Wash your hands. Don't touch your face. Okay? Avoid your eyes, nose, mouth, and ears. Okay? And I will see you later. I am sure I will get roped back into this. Kawapa matin. Just see you later. Au revoir. Goodbye. Kasagi tin. I love you. Okay? Enjoy the sunshine that we're getting over here. I love it. Au revoir.